Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Ask Rich. I'm Kelly Patchett sitting in for Rich today, and today we're turning the tables and we're asking the questions. I'm really glad you joined us. I think it's going to be a really fun episode. Today we're looking past the actual floor plans and designs of the houses to the finished product and thinking about things like drywall and colors and what kitchen cabinet colors are hot today. And my guest today is Rebecca Hay. Rebecca is the founder and creative director of Rebecca Hay Designs from Toronto. She's a podcast host. You may have even seen her at the grocery store as you're checking out on publications like Style at Home, Beautiful Design Made Simple, and many other magazines. She has a large following on Instagram too, and I'll be sure to leave the link to that in the show notes so that you can follow her after. We've had questions that were supplied by many in the Confederation Log Homes community, so we're really excited to answer those questions as well. So without further ado, please welcome to the show, Rebecca Hay. Rebecca, welcome to Confederation's YouTube show. It's so nice to have you here.
Hi, Kelly. Thank you very much. It is a total honor to be here. Thank you.
Well, what I haven't mentioned so far is that I have had the pleasure of working with Rebecca on my own home, which she renovated from top to bottom. And when we went through that process, I knew we had to have her on the Ask Rich channel. It's going to be really fun because I think there's so much that you have to share with the Confederation audience. And I have to say that, we talk a lot about getting a house designed and everything chosen and the package. But really, the really fun part is to envision your home on the day that you're going to move in and styling it and getting it just the way you want it. And I think that would be fun to get into that stage today.
Totally. Design is fun. I mean, I do this for a living because it just lights me up. And you're right. It's about envisioning your life and your family. And I'm closing my eyes right now if you can't see me, if you're just listening. But it's so important to do that because it can be stressful sometimes when you get into a design project, especially when the decorating comes in at the end. But it is so worth it. It's just keeping your mind focused on the big picture. It's a really exciting time. I mean, I want to build my own house.
I know.
I love talking about this stuff.
Well, speaking of that, I think if there's a ray of light in 2020 and now 2021, it's that the real estate north of Toronto, north, east, west, everywhere is on fire right now. And I know in Confederation's community that people are just deciding, they've learned, look, I can work from anywhere. If I have an internet connection, I can live anywhere. And so people are saying, well, this was our dream, but it's time to make it a reality. So they're just jumping in and doing and getting going on things. So hopefully this will help provide some inspiration as well.
Oh, I hope so.
I hope so too. So let's just jump right in. So I've got some questions for you today, but we reached out to everybody on Confederation's email list and asked them to ask you some questions as well. So we've got some great questions from our community. And so stay tuned. We are going to get to those shortly. So what I want to start with though is we have something called a Getting Started worksheet for Confederation, and it's where we help people sort of think through their gotta-haves from their must-haves and start to get clear on the big things, number of bedrooms and what they want. And so one of the questions, and by the way, I'll post a link to that in the notes below if you're looking for it. One of the questions we ask in that is, are you traditional, transitional, or modern? What's your style? And so I'll tell you how it breaks down. And we have a lot of these. So there's a lot of data. 57% say that they're traditional. 29% say they have transitional tastes. and 14% are modern. So it gets me wondering because before I undertook renovating my own home, I had to be told what transitional is. So could you tell everybody what transitional means?
Of course. That actually is interesting to hear because, oh, that's so interesting. I feel that the majority of the people that I work with are transitional, as you say, but maybe don't fully understand what that is. So transitional is truly a blend between between modern and traditional. It's a transition, if you will, between the two. And it can be, you can see it in different iterations, but essentially transitional will mean that you blend in some modern elements with some more traditional elements. So, especially when you're thinking about a timber frame or a log home, which is a more traditional feeling, um, when you blend that with more modern finishes, like light oak floors or clean streamlines of furniture, now you're getting a transitional look. So that statistic surprises me that people consider themselves more traditional, the bulk of them, because I wonder if some part of that is actually more transitional without realizing it, just like you were saying.
Yeah, and I think, and you tell me what you think. I think anytime you're building a new home or a new cottage, it's really an opportunity to sort of challenge who you've been, what your home looks today before you decide to how you're going to, outfit your kitchen, like the types of cabinets you might put in your kitchen and all the little elements that you're going to choose for your home. It's a good chance to sort of challenge yourself, see what's out there again. What do you think about that?
Totally. And I think it's interesting because when we started working with you, you were saying, Rebecca, like push me a little bit out of my comfort zone. I want to be a little bit more contemporary. But when I look at your home that we designed for you, it's not modern. It's not. It is transitional. And I think what's interesting about that is that when you can push yourself a little bit to think outside the lines and incorporate some of those more modern touches, it becomes that comfortable balance. Um, Especially, I think long term, what we're starting to see is a lot of people who think they're traditional realize that in this day and age that we're living in, true traditional, you don't see a lot of that out there in the world. It really is more of this transition in a way without going completely modern. Um, I don't think I answered your question. That just
No, you
got me
did.
thinking about you and how you wanted us to push you a little bit to be a little bit more contemporary, but and yet it still feels, in my humble opinion, your home is beautiful, obviously, but it's
Thank you.
very transitional.
Right. So, okay, let's make this actionable for everybody because how is a way, what are the ways that people can sort of start to get clear on their log or timber frame home and start to figure out what's out there and what do I like and where do I fit in today in all the choices that are out there. Do you have any tips for what people can do to start sort of curating what their look is?
I mean, if you're looking to kind of come up with a vision for the home, I think that's what you're asking. Like, how do you kind of pull that and curate that vision? Certainly start with images. You can collect images of spaces you like from magazines, online, on Pinterest. And then what I always say to our clients is once you've collected those images, take a moment to look at each picture and circle, if you can, if it's paper, what about that image resonates with you, because sometimes clients will come to us with an image. Let's say it's a timber frame home, and they have this beautiful living room with this 2-story high fireplace, and they show us this image and they say, I want this. Well, what they are referring to might be different than what I interpret. So I might interpret they want the post and beams, they want the height, but really what they like is the furniture and the rug and the area down below. So you need to get really specific and start to see where the patterns lie. That's another tip, is like look at patterns. If you start looking and resonating with the same type of wood tones or the same style of kitchen, then start to take note. Okay, this is where I'm leaning. What is it about all these kitchens that they have in common? Oh, they're all shaker style, let's say. Okay, that's a classic, works in a modern or a more traditional setting. Okay, that's great. And then start to make a list. It's a little bit of homework actually that you have to do. Make a list of those things that you're starting to see that are jumping out at you time and time again.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And especially if you're in the early planning stages too, because Confederation's design team will design anything, your home to be anything you need. And sometimes those sort of more surface things impact the design of the actual home. And so having a good picture of that as you start to work with the design team is a great way to sort of get where you're going and make sure it's ticking all the boxes. And I think that the closer you are to your vision, the easier it will be to plan your home. So I
Mhm.
love that. So let me ask you this. So we're going to get to some really specific questions from the community, but what I want to ask you, there's sort of something, a theme in them. And one thing that people are cautious about is how do you sort of embrace new trends but not choose things, and probably like kitchen's a good example, not choose things that are here today and gone tomorrow. So do
Mhm.
you have any guidance on that? I want to update my look, but I don't want it to be look like that's, oh, well, that was 2018.
Right. I mean, there's always going to be some element that you can't, as time changes, something will date itself. But if you want to avoid that as best you can, you want to stick with classic elements. I mean, kitchens are a great example because it's a big investment, especially when you're building from scratch and you're doing a brand new kitchen and you want it to be very current. I would say stay away from the extreme tile trends that you're seeing. Stick with something that maybe is a little bit more classic. Like I said, like a shaker cabinet door. My goodness, those have been around for ages. Go with a modified shaker door. Um, do things that are the bones that will stand the test of time. So the counters, maybe the backsplash. Maybe don't go crazy and wild with the backsplash, but you could have a little fun with the kitchen island color because that's something that could be changed down the road. We go into so many people's houses where they just want to refresh their kitchen, and a quick and easy go-to for us to refresh is to paint. So as long as you have the good bones, you have the quality cabinetry, great flooring, like don't cheap out on your flooring, right? Do nice, solid, great flooring. I know there was a question about flooring. We can get to that maybe. I think there was, we can get to it later,
Yes,
but
there is. Yeah.
paint and hardware, those are fun ways. If you want to be trendy, do some cool knobs. You can always change those out really easily down the road. A classic cabinets don't really ever go out of style. That would be my recommendation for something if you're trying to keep it timeless. Don't fall into that trap of trendy, in my opinion, is really great if you're someone who wants to refresh every 5 years, or you have a restaurant or a commercial space where you need that impact and that wow, or an office building. But this is my opinion, so take it for what you want. I'm not a crazy out there designer. I like to design homes that are just classic and livable, and I think you can pull little bits of trends without it being too trendy and dating itself within a few years.
That's good
Got to
advice.
stick to
And
the
I think,
bones.
especially with the log home, people who it's their dream to build a log or timber frame home, whether it's transitional or even when it's modern, quite frankly, you know, it is always cozy and homey. And so I think that that's really good advice, especially for our audience. So speaking of trends, one of the more popular trends right now is something called modern farmhouse. And so I wanted to ask you,
Yes, oh yes.
I'm going
Everybody
to
wants
ask you
modern
this.
farmhouse.
Does it work with a log or timber frame home? I'm sure with timber frame, does it work with a log house? And is it played out? Is that, first of all, give us a brief overview of what it is. And do you think it's here to stay? Is it played out? And does it
Mhm.
work?
So modern farmhouse, I mean, I think it really has stemmed from Chip and Joanna Gaines, which they have this TV show. What's it called? I can't remember the name of it.
Fixer upper, I think.
Thank you, Fixer Upper on HGTV, and it's just gone gangbusters. And I mean, they've been doing that show for several years now. Essentially, what they've done is they've sort of people have this romantic vision of living on a farm and in the country, right? So they've taken that sort of desire, I think, that's deep within so many of us, and they've mashed it up with a more modern take, modern farmhouse. Typically, everything is painted white with accents of black, often black windows, um, elements of wood, definitely the rustic elements are in there, some vintage furniture, and it's like a nod to the traditional, but it feels modern. It's the perfect example of transitional design, actually, Kelly. Totally perfect example. Um, like anything, it will not be here forever. It is definitely here for a while. I've seen it within the interior design industry across North America really explode, and a lot of designers are starting to adapt those elements into their designs. With a timber frame house, I mean, you could easily make it more modern if you wanted that modern farmhouse look. You would want to incorporate, like I said, the black metals, whether it's the windows or not. It could be just in the light fixtures, bringing in black kitchen faucet and knobs. Maybe you paint out, God forbid, some of the wood in white, right? That's what you would do to get that more modern farmhouse look.
I can see it. I can see it working too. And um, I have to say, recently, and if you Google Confederation, they've got a whole bunch of really amazing reviews on Google. And recently, somebody left a review and they posted the pictures of their home, and they have the black casement windows in their log home. And you don't see it as often, but I thought it looked spectacular myself. I really loved it in conjunction with what they had done with their home. And so it's a little more unexpected, I think, but it really worked. So what do you think about the black casement windows?
I mean, I think that trend is on its way out personally. I'm so over it, but it still looks good. It still looks good. Now, don't forget, as a designer, we're always trying to stay ahead of the trends, right? So
Right.
we're always trying to push our clients to do something that our clients aren't comfortable with because they haven't seen it everywhere. But then the clients that trust us and do it in a couple of years, they say, "Oh yeah, we were ahead of that curve." But I will add actually to the modern farmhouse look. Another way that you can, if you like that look and you want to get it in your timber frame home, would be to add something like shiplap or like a tongue and groove wall paneling, either on the ceiling between the frames or on the walls, and paint that out in a light off white. That will lend itself to, it adds a little bit more interest than drywall, but that is a classic feature of a modern farmhouse.
Okay, let's leave that behind. I think we've been there, we've done that now. It's time to uh, move on. So let's talk about um, let's talk about the style, the finishing things. What I've noticed and what you've helped me understand is that once your log or timber frame home is all built and it's all coming together and you're moving your furniture in now, everything's coming together. It's the styling details that really take it to the finish line, I find. So, do you have any tips or that you can pass on to people as they put the little finishing touches to style their home at the end?
Yeah, I mean, one tip that I wouldn't typically say to my clients, but I'm starting to see the value in this, is collect items throughout the process. You know, once you start in when you once you engage with the builder and it's like you dug out the ground, like this thing's happening. You know, when you're out and about and you see something that speaks to you, whether it's a wooden bowl or a cutting board or a vase, pick it up because there's so much to be said for filling your home with the items that speak to you. And that's what I've loved about, Kelly, working with you. It's like you wanted us to help you style, but you guys already had so many great little items. And you don't want to over clutter. That's the other
Mhm.
thing. You don't need, less is more sometimes. And I'm a fan of styling the perfect little vignette, but just collect the things that are meaningful to you. I love collecting vintage items, items from a consignment store, things that tell a story or have a history, and bringing those in throughout the home to add a little bit more of that older, because realistically, everything else is probably going to be new. So it's kind of a
Right.
neat way to add a little bit more character and personality to the space with the accessories. But they
Well,
really are, as you know, those are the cherry on the icing on the cake. You need
that's
those.
right. That's right. Just the right throw, just a little bit of texture.
Yeah,
Okay, I want to circle back to something that you just said. This is a great segue into something that I learned from you that I think is really important. I think if people are building their home with Confederation, I think it could be expected that it's probably going to be a mix of the furniture they already have and plan to incorporate in their new home, with a mix of probably some new pieces as well. If they're building a cottage, could quite honestly be all new because there won't be much coming from their full-time residents. So um, I guess what is a way, if you're incorporating the pieces you already have but trying to look at them in a whole new light? um, and let me sort of talk about my experience with you, is that you really taught me about the importance of flow. And one thing that the Confederation designers creating the floor plans are really, careful about is that open, everybody wants open concepts and flow to the rooms. But you can ruin that flow with the placement of furniture the wrong way. So do you have a few tips in
totally.
that regard?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that quite often people have something that they want to keep and bring to their new home. I mean, often if it's a cottage, you're right, Kelly, not everybody has kept an old, sofa in the basement, and they do need to buy new. Buying new is a great opportunity to make sure you're buying the right piece that has the right scale for the space, which just lends itself to what you were saying, which is you want there to be enough space, but not too much. One of our rule of thumbs in the design world is you don't ever want to have less than 36 inches for walking space. So whether that is between the dining room table and the wall or behind a sofa, if that is an access point, I would say in most cases you want more than 36. 36 inches would be the minimum. Same thing goes for a kitchen. And I'm sure, the kitchen designers will tell you the same thing. 36 in a kitchen, especially in a nice, big, open, spacious log home, that's too tight. I would go for a minimum of 42 if you have the space. So you really want to keep in mind that when you're buying furniture, don't buy too much. Just because you have the space doesn't mean you have to fill it.
Right.
And another thing to pay attention to is when you look at something in a floor plan, and I fall prey to this every single project. I'm sure we did it with yours too. It looks like you have so much room. So you look down at the floor plan and you see the sofa and you see the chair and you think, wow, there's tons of space. But if you actually measure those pinch points, let's say between the dining room table and the sofa, you might be surprised that it's not as many feet or inches as you thought. So just keep that in mind, to not over to get pieces that are too big and take up too much space. I mean, I could get into all kinds of decorating tips right now. I won't go down that road, but you really, when you are furnishing your home, you really want to think about who's using the space and how you want to use it, right? Is it
Right.
a social space? Sectionals are great when it's a family all cuddling up to watch a movie, but maybe not great if you're in your 60s and you're entertaining a lot. You might want more chairs so people have their own autonomous space. It's all kinds of things to think about when you're furnishing a home.
Okay, that's great. I think that's great advice. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to hop over to questions that have been asked by our community. And we're going to start, I'm going to refer to my notes now. We're going to start with a question from Janine. And she asked something really specific. Are there any rules of thumb for figuring out how a big surround and mantle you should have on a fireplace, or how big a fireplace box or opening should be for a room?
I wouldn't say there's a rule of thumb. I mean, I don't know. I suppose if you studied all the rooms and the ratio of the fireplace to the wall and the ceiling height, you do want to keep in mind ceiling height. That's not typically an issue with these homes because you usually have lots of height.
Right.
So if that's the case, I would say go big or go home. I love a big fireplace. I'm a huge fan of it. When it comes to the surround, I do like to see a minimum of 10 inches around. Now, I'm talking, these are smaller Toronto homes I'm often working in. When we do work, we're actually working on a timber frame home at the moment. We're helping the family decorate, and you have more space. They have more space. So you could have 12-inch surround as long as it's proportional. Um, I always say maximize what you can without going overboard. Ceiling height is the most important. If you have less than 8 feet, you want to keep really standard. And that's where the fireplace, I'm not sure if it's the fireplace company or whoever's supplying your fireplace insert, they can really help advise too, as well as if it's a wood burning or a gas. You want to consider those two options. If it's gas, you need to look at the size of the room and its ability to heat. Sometimes these little fireplaces really heat up a small room and you probably don't want to go quite as big. So there's a lot of considerations there. There isn't really a rule of thumb, but it definitely is something that the design team can help you with. Visualize that space and draw it out, really draw it out so you see how it's going to look.
Yeah, that's a great answer because, especially for a lot of the Confederation floor plans, and no two are the same because they all get customized. They're no two are the same, but they all share, um, in the great room, the ceiling heights are almost always so generous. So you could do something quite spectacular, but people also put them in their lower levels, or, you may even want one in your bedroom. Who knows? So,
Mhm.
so those are good comments. So here's a question that also from Janine, but Kim also asked this, Kim Johnstone also asked this question. What are the current trends for kitchen cabinet colors? And what is considered classic? What seems to work well for log homes? And I'm assuming when Janine says classic, we're getting back to that idea that it's not going to go out of style quickly.
Mhm, mhm. I mean, again, take everything with a grain of salt because everything at some point is dated. But classically, I would go with a very neutral palette, a painted off-white kitchen. You can never go wrong, or a warm light gray. That's a little bit more on the trendy side. The faux finishes that were trendy for a while, I know, especially with people having country properties, those are kind of out of style in my opinion. You know what I mean? The faux finish, it looked almost weathered. There was sort of a weathered
Mhm.
cabinet look. Not really popular. Definitely wood. Right now, wood is the rage. Natural wood cabinetry with a clean shaker door, something that's in the middle to light tones, not necessarily that sort of cherry wood of the past, definitely not the red oak of the 80s. But I think the door style type of wood makes it more classic. So keep a style again, like going back to the shaker door. I feel like I'm promoting shaker doors, but shaker doors are very classic. You can do a modified shaker with a bead, and especially with a log home because there's a lot of wood. So you may not want to do a wood island and have all those beams, right? And all those posts and then have the wood floor. So maybe you paint the island a darker color. That's very popular right now. Painting the island a contrasting color to the rest of the kitchen. But I would go with creamy, warm tones that tie in and pull out the warmth of the wood. I'd stay away from cool grays. Cool grays are on the way out.
Okay. So let's now hop to a question from Joy Laneville. Thanks, Joy, for asking the question. And she says, we're going to break this down because it's detailed, but I think we'll get it. So she says, hello, Rebecca. My question to you is, we will have a log home built in the spring. That's exciting, Joy. All open concept. The kitchen and dining room area is completely open to the great room. And that's all west facing. It's with a west window. Our great room furniture will be caramel color and sleek but comfortable. And the floors are honey colored hardwood. What color would you do the kitchen cupboards in?
Well, this is a loaded question, Joy.
Oh, wait a minute, wait a minute. I have to throw in a couple more details that Joy,
Okay.
because this is perfect for Rebecca. Because to know Rebecca is to know that her favorite color is blue. And she loves her blues and whites. And Joy writes that she was thinking of using darker blue walls, whites, and in the kitchen, she's going to have two corner log walls. So she's thinking navy-ish blue, white, black, caramel, and lots of beautiful green plants. Okay, Rebecca, solve her problem.
I don't even think she has a problem. I think Joy is like right on the money. You got this, girl. That is totally my color scheme. That's my go-to. I think navy and natural tones of wood are just such a natural complement. It's like a cognac leather couch, right? With the navy wall, like, oof, it's so rich, it's so beautiful. So you're right. I mean, it sounds like she wants to know specifically the kitchen cupboards. So if you want to keep the floors are a honey wood, right?
Right?
And then the furniture has a lot of caramel. So we got lots of the warm wood tones. Then maybe do the kitchen either with a navy, like you say, or bring in just like a warm, creamy white.
Mhm.
I will tell you the latest trend that I'm starting to see is we're going away from that stark white and it's really creamy.
Mhm.
So there's a color by Benjamin Moore and it's called, I think it's called creamy white. And it's much more of, I hate to say, I don't want to say beige because that makes you think it's a different color, but I would go with that creamy color. It'll complement the navy and still complement the warmth of the wood.
That sounds amazing. I'm starting to visualize Joy's space right now. And I think
Lots
that
of
sounds
sunshine. I love it.
really
South of
good.
Orlando.
And, Rebecca, maybe if you can just confirm that color, I'll drop that, especially for
For
Joy, in
sure.
the show notes. So,
Totally.
okay, that was
I know it
great.
because I'm using it for my own walk-in closet. We just had a whole custom closet design for my house, and I'm using that color on my cabinet. So
Well, there you
it's the
go,
designer
Joy.
choice du jour. I'll share it with you.
Rebecca, I don't have that in my home. Now I'm ticked.
Sorry, you gotta do it again. You gotta do another
Okay.
reno.
Okay, so now we're going to move on to a question from Kim Johnstone. And she wants to have consistent flooring throughout the whole main floor. She's interested, what's trending but durable that she could use because her log home is on a lake and she's a little bit worried about the sand and things that come in from the forest. So does consistency rule, or does she actually introduce some tile in those high wear areas?
Yeah, I mean, I would, if you want consistency, I agree, do hardwood throughout. I still think hardwood is always your best choice, especially if it's solid or a good engineered, because it can be refinished down the road if need be. Um, but tile in an entry or in a mudroom, it's always a great idea. It's not going to affect that consistent flow. I think it's expected if you pick the right tile, even if you do something like a slate or a natural stone and something that's in the same tonality as the hardwood, it'll be less of a shock, less of that contrast between tile and flooring. I would stay away from laminates and vinyls only because laminates, they sound like they're durable, but they're not great with water. And so they do bubble. I have them in my office where I am right now. It's not worked out so well for us. And if you're environmentally conscious, vinyl is not usually the best way to go because um, it's just not as environmental. So I think hardwood is always a great way to go, especially I think it's expected in a log and timber home.
I think so too. And Rich is going to love that answer, Rebecca, because everything they do is
Solid,
with environmental, like
right?
everything, right down to the shavings when they're cutting the logs, everything gets reused.
Amazing.
So yeah, I know that you and Confederation are very on the same wavelength on that, as are so many of the people in the Confederation community. So Kim also has another question. They want to have a log home with log walls, no drywall. What would you suggest in finishes for things like the ceiling and the floors and the doors, all the other things, railing, cabinetry, so it doesn't look like wood on wood on wood, but still complements the true character of a log home? And just before you answer that, I want to jump in on one thing, Kim, just to make sure that I know that you understand your options here. Um, so when you build a log home, your perimeter walls are log, and you see those logs on the inside, the interior of your home. The interior walls don't need to be log. So they can be drywall. I just want to make sure that you understand that, because sometimes people think that all the walls in the house have to be log, and they don't. And I have to tell you that most people, the vast majority, use drywall on the inside walls. Now, having said that, if you love the log look so much, there is a log siding that you can get for your home so that the interior walls look like that they're the solid logs, and they look just like the log profile of the exterior walls. So that is an option. And sometimes the gable end, it's like your room comes across like this, and you have the pointy part of your ceiling. You could do those in that log siding as well, and it just looks like a continuation of your exterior log, or that can be drywall. So there's a few things. I just wanted to make sure that you perfectly understand what your options are. And with that, I'm going to pass it over um, to Rebecca to talk about the wood on wood on wood and the other selections you make to sort of balance everything out.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add to that, Kelly, is there's sort of that hybrid look that you can do. So if you want to have, personally, I love the logs, I love the wood, I love the look, but there's a point where it's too much wood for me. But again, okay, so it's twofold. First of all, you need to understand what is the feeling you want to convey inside your place. Because if this is a ski lodge, that wood on wood might be awesome, right? And then the furnishings complement that, and you feel like you're in Aspen or Colorado or Montana. But perhaps maybe you want it to be a year round, and you want it a little bit more airy, more of like a Muskoka vibe. In that case, I would do a combination and do like exposed logs or the timber, and do, like I said before, something like a tongue and groove or a shiplap painted. So what I like about that is you have that woodsy cabin feel. So you have the texture of the lines, but it's painted white. To me, that's a hybrid. So it's like, instead of doing the drywall or all wood, to me, it's like that perfect blend. I love the look of painted siding, painted tongue and groove. I think it's really high end. It's durable. It's maybe more expensive. I can't speak to that, but I love the look.
Well, I do too. And there's a gallery. I'll look that up and put it in the show notes as well. I'm thinking about a Confederation kitchen that is all creamy white. And I'm even thinking that the beams and the ceilings might be painted out white. I'm not sure about that, but I'm going to double check, and we'll drop a link to that gallery in the show notes. So whether it is or it isn't, it looks spectacular, and it has that nice balance of the light and the wood, and they really complement each other beautifully. So one other question is design. Okay, aging in place. And this is something that we've written about in our blog too. It's, people build a cottage and then realize this is going to be our forever home, because we just feel so good when we're here that we don't ever want to leave. And then one day you don't have to leave. So what are some things that people can do to make sure that they can age in place so that they can stay in their home as long as possible?
This is a really great question. It's actually interesting. This is a really hot topic in the design industry right now. I spoke at a conference virtually at the tail end of 2020. It was all about this. It was all about the livable environment, because more and more designers are having to pay attention, and I think it's great. Some of the things that I would recommend would be, if you're looking to build something that will to age in place quite comfortably. Obviously, a bungalow is the first. Fewer stairs, the better.
Mhm.
I know that Confederation offers that. You could do something that we always do, even when we're retrofitting here in the city, is we do blocking. So when you're building your home, especially in the bathrooms, if you're doing the bathroom and you're not sure yet of if you're going to need a grab bar here or extra support somewhere, when you build the walls behind the drywall, if you're doing drywall, only if you're doing drywall, this applies. If there's already wood there, that's great. But we do what's called blocking, which is you may have the builder or contractor install plywood behind the drywall. And that way you have a strong surface to later mount a grab bar on. In addition, when I'm thinking about bathrooms, we often try and do anti-slip flooring material. So I like a mosaic floor tile because it has lots of grout lines, which are naturally anti-slip, but also trying to eliminate any transitions. So if you can do, and if you're building from scratch, you can do this, you can keep the floor level and have just a walk-in shower where there's no curb to step over. You're eliminating that tripping hazard. These are just a few of the little tips that you can do when you're planning ahead, and you have the beauty when you build from scratch that you can include all of these. There's something else that I missed, Kelly. I feel like there's a couple other items.
Did you mention main floor laundry?
No, that's, yep, main floor laundry. Big
Main
one,
floor
for
laundry,
sure.
main floor
And master bedroom or
master
principal
for
bedroom.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really popular. It's really popular for people, I think, right across the board. Even if you're on the younger side building your log home, you know, ranch style bungalow homes plans are really popular, or everything on the main level and maybe a loft, because a loft is later on in life you could probably live without if you don't have access. But having the essentials on the main floor is just great planning, because you're going to get in that home and you're never going to want to leave it.
Yeah, totally. And you know what, any stage of life, I mean, I have two little kids, ages 3 and 6, and I'm thinking I would love a house where my principal bedroom is on the main floor. So after I put the kids to bed, the party can keep going on the main floor, when we can entertain again. And you don't have to go back up and disturb the kids, and they have their space and you have yours. Same goes for having guests. When you can have guests stay overnight again, it's nice for them to be separated from your living quarters. So I always prefer those types of floor plans, and they work perfectly if you're looking to age in place.
So that was a great question. Thank you. I do think that was from Kim as well. So thank you, Kim. You asked some great questions. So now we've got a couple more, and then I'm going to let you go. So Michelle Maycock asks, what is the average % of wall space covered with drywall? We're back to drywall versus wood again. But this time in a timber frame home. Do you mostly see the main living area in drywall, or is it mostly in the bedrooms? So I'm going to just jump in here for a second, because with the timber frame home, and also known as post and beam, it's almost like a house within a house. So those posts and beams are actually structural. They're holding the house up. And therefore, in between, on the inside, on the interior, in between those posts is drywall. So it's not the exterior log. So before I hand this one, I will tell you that you asked what the trend is, and the trend is almost always people want a mix of drywall. So at least if it's a log home, interior walls in drywall. But with the timber frame home, your exterior walls too are drywall in between those structural supports. So one thing I want to mention is that if you want to see 3 different homes so that you can see what do you like and where are we going to land on this, I would recommend reaching out to Rich and his team at Confederation, and they'll show you a log home, they'll show you a true timber frame home, and then they'll show you a hybrid, which is a little bit of both, where the timber frame is more decorative. So that's a really great way to get clear on where you're headed. Okay, so what do you think? Timber frame. I love that look. I love that post and
Mhm.
beam look. What do you think, Rebecca?
Yeah, I love it. I mentioned we're working in Muskoka in a timber frame. It's not Confederation, mind you, but it is a beautiful timber frame uh, cottage, and it's drywall in between the timbers. But one thing I will add is that they do have tongue and groove on the ceilings. So the tongue
Right.
and groove is in the wood, and I said this already. For fear of repeating myself, I still love the look of, instead of all the drywall, doing tongue and groove, but painting it the color that you would paint the drywall.
Right.
Especially, and if you're not comfortable doing all the walls like that, like I think even Rich in his own home did this, where you can do tongue and groove on the ceiling between the sort of joist between the beams, and then
Yes.
just do drywall on the walls.
Right. Right. He did do
Yeah.
that. He did do that, and I'll post the gallery um, in the notes below for Rich's home too, so that you could see what Rebecca's talking about and see some pictures for that. So okay, the last question is from Neil Blue, and um, well, I think we kind of covered this already,
I
but
feel
we'll
like this is a hot topic, right? It's like basically balancing. Well, you say the question, but I think you're going to talk about the same thing. It's like the drywall wood combination, right?
right. It's like the wood on wood on wood. And I
Yeah.
think maybe one area, we talked about the kitchen cabinetry. So we've covered that. Um, we've talked about, one thing I could throw into the mix. And Neil, you're saying, how do I counter that wood on wood on wood? And so one thing that I will add in is that when your floor plan is pretty much to the completion phase, what you're going to go through with the Confederation design team is that they're going to do a 3D rendering of your home that you can experience. And what that means is that if you're still unsure about, am I going to put drywall in the ceiling in between the beams, or um, am I going to put tongue and groove? They'll show you, they'll swap it out on the fly. And as you're sort of kind of experiencing your home, walking through it, and you'll be able to see the difference. So
That's
um,
cool. That's
it
awesome. That's an
it
awesome
is
feature.
so awesome because before you go, yes, let's print the blueprints, you're absolutely sure about the choices that you're making. So
Mhm.
it just gives you a level of confidence that I don't think people expect that they're going to have. So
Mhm.
um, I think the
I'll
only
just,
other, yeah, go
sorry, I
ahead.
just wanted to add to that for Neil, was with the furniture too. I mean, if you have wood on all the walls, that doesn't mean you have to shy away from adding wood in the furniture. So yes, I think it's important to find some contrast, like maybe have an off-white sofa that contrasts with the wood walls, but still bring in some wood elements. It gives it adds for that repetition factor. So one of the greatest rules of thumb in interior design is repetition, and repetition brings cohesion. So if you have wood repeated in multiple elements, not just on the walls and ceiling, it will make everything feel a little bit more seamless. So don't be afraid to have some furniture pieces in wood. It's just about finding a happy balance. And it depends on the look again. Do you want that Montana or aspen like cabin, or do you want more of that light and airy feel?
Yeah. And I think, Rebecca, what you've taught me is that, what breaks up some of what you fear will be monotony are things like area rugs, um, textures. And texture could be in like a stone fireplace too. And things that will naturally break that up. And I don't know of a Confederation log home that doesn't have great big windows. And even that, you're bringing the outdoors in. And I'm sure with I think even the way that you might do it, if you have a staircase, are just elements that add some interest and visual difference from what too much of one thing. Would you agree with that, Rebecca? I hope so, because you've
Yeah,
kind of
of
taught me
course.
that.
That's well, good. I'm glad I taught you something. Now you can share all your wisdom. Yeah, you want to have a little bit. It makes it more dynamic.
Yeah. Well, I think that we have covered the questions today, and I just want to thank Rebecca so much for joining us. And everybody, please leave questions and notes in the comment section below. We would love that. If you're not subscribed to Confederation's YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell, and then you'll know when Rich posts his next YouTube video. And yeah, we really thank you everybody for joining us. And Rebecca, tell us where people can find you. And I just before you do, I have to say you have to follow her on Instagram because she has quite the Instagram following.
So Instagram is probably where I spend most of my days. I'm at Rebecca Hay Designs, and that's with an S. I also have a YouTube channel. I guess you just search my name, Rebecca Hay, on YouTube. And you can find our design website at RebeccaHayDesigns.com. It's pretty straightforward.
Great. Well, thank you again. And I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of their day. And thanks, Rebecca. Have a super day.
Thank you, Kelly. It's been great.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.